In the darkest nights, we find our light. Battered souls, but we won't lose sight. Surviving together, never alone. Through every trial, we carry on. Surviving together, never alone. Through every trial, we carry on. Surviving together, we stand tall. United forever. Strength and courage will overcome. Oh, surviving together, victorious, and never, never alone. Hand in hand, we'll face the unknown.
We see you, we hear you, and we believe you. Hey, everyone. How you doing tonight? It's a Friday, and I'm on, I know, but I promised that we do this show. And wow, is it going to be hopefully some good discussion tonight. So if you didn't know, you've landed at Surviving Together, a safe space for trauma survivors to connect on their healing journeys and form community, as well as providing education, trauma-related education for all. So far we have Celia here tonight. Thank you for being here. Kermal and Crystal. Wonderful to have you guys here. Before we start, I wanted to just remind everybody that Saturday, so tomorrow at 3 p.m. will be the Clothesline Project debut. So everything is getting finalized as we speak, I do believe. I saw some drafts earlier of the montage that we're going to put together for you. It's National Hangout Day, so we are going to hang out our virtual laundry in the Clothesline Project. So don't want to miss that tomorrow at 3. And then also I wanted to mention, if you did not see the post, did start a second YouTube channel. I must be nuts. I'm crazy. It's going to be for my true crime content. I don't do a lot of it anyway right now. I don't plan on expanding that. I'm not going to be covering just any old true crime case. It's really not even any true crime that deals with sexual assault. I need to have something to say about it. Something that relates back to what we talk about. So as it stands now, it's probably not going to be a very active channel, although I do hope to do a few lives when we hit 50 subs. I have reached 14, I think I checked before I went on. And because I had it handy, I'm going to drop its name. So it is named Law Ninja right now. It's Law Ninja Mac. That may change slightly. I'm not sure if I have going to do like Mac the Law Ninja, because I can change the handle. So I might do that. Or I might just go by Sharon on that one, you know? So I'm not sure. If you have thoughts, drop them in the comments. Appreciate it. But if you haven't already subscribed, if you are interested in true crime at all, please do hop over there and give me a subscription. I'd appreciate it. There is no content there right now. I warn you ahead of time. The true crime content that I have on this channel that's in a playlist labeled True Crime. I know it's so creative, right? I'm going to copy that material on over to that channel, to Law Ninja channel. But I just haven't done it yet. I was going to do it today, but I really got deep diving into this issue that we're going to cover. So, vigilante pedophile hunters. They also go by predator catchers, predator poachers. Some individual groups have taken various combinations of those names. Yeah, Crystal, I know. I tried to just do Mac and it wouldn't take that. So I think I have to have like a last name or something there. So yeah, and that's why I don't care. I mean, I know my name's out there anyway. I haven't, hidden it at all. So I figure if I'm going to be doing true crime and also speaking from a legal perspective, maybe I'll just use Sharon over there. I don't know. I may just keep it Mac just to keep it simple. Haven't decided yet, but at least I got it going so we can kind of get the ball rolling in the right direction. So, vigilante pedophile hunters. This subject, you guys may have differing opinions on that, and that's fine. I just ask that you be respectful of each other and any position that somebody else may have. I am going to put the trigger warning up just because of what we're talking about. I don't plan on going into details about specific things at all. However, as your mental health is always first and foremost. So if anything is triggering, whether it is something that I'm covering or something that somebody's saying in a comment, please check yourself, step out if you need to, take care of yourself. I'm going to set up a little taller so that my chin's not in the trigger warning the entire time. Hang on, guys. I also am waiting for a message, so I apologize. Okay. That was what I was waiting for. So thank you. I just need to take care of that. I apologize ahead of time if this is kind of all over the place. I have 4 pages of notes, which is a lot for me because normally when I'm researching, something like this, I can kind of condense things down in my brain and put them into an order. But I just had so many thoughts on this subject. And every time I'd go and I'd cover something and then I'd have another thought and I'd quick scribble it on this other page. So I may be going back and forth with a lot of different things. But this is a subject I've thought about before. The New York Times just released an article a few weeks ago talking about the rise of these groups and how they are becoming more violent, at least in their assessment in the study that they did. So I wanted to kind of delve into this and look at it from both sides. Why are these people doing this? What's their real motivation behind it? Is it helpful? Is it a hindrance? Are they effective? Are they saving any kids? So I had a lot of different questions about this. I wanted to try and go into it with an open mind. And I think I've kind of come to some conclusions for myself. You guys will have to figure out where, you fall on this line. Many of you may have heard of To Catch a Predator with Chris Hansen. This is kind of the beginnings of this whole acting as a decoy online, but it also being published for the general public to view. Police have been doing these types of decoy sting operations in the past, but they weren't videotaped, right? Everything wasn't shown to the public as to what happened with it. So these were kind of the first, the group that they worked with. This was the first time that they actually televised this. And the show was eventually canceled in 2007 through no real fault of the show's own. And an unfortunate incident ended up occurring. There ended up being a big lawsuit and the show was canceled. Chris Hansen went on another platform to do a very similar type thing. And I honestly, I do not know what he calls it. Hey, Mike F., how are you doing? Glad you're joining us tonight, listening. And Aquarius is here as well. Welcome both to you. Thank you for joining me on this Friday evening. So as social media got, started to take off, you started to have a few more groups like this. And really since 2010 is when I won't call it a total explosion because I don't know how the numbers went up. I was trying to find some numbers for these types of groups in the United States and say, how many are there? And I couldn't. What I did find is about 7 years ago, a news outlet in the UK reported that there were 75 groups. Last year, they reported that there were 150 groups. And that's just in the UK. So I have to imagine that the type of growth has got to be at least fairly similar here in terms of the numbers. I was listening to one guy who said that he had, in his organization, he had 200 and almost 300 teams throughout the US. So that's just one group. And he has almost 300 teams throughout the US doing decoy type work, trying to catch pedophiles. Right off the bat, what do you guys think of this? Are you in favor of these groups? I'm curious to see where you guys sit now. I'm wondering if anything I have to present to you will change your mind by the end of it. Why aren't they favored? Let's speak with that first. Why aren't they favored? Nope. Changed my mind. Sorry, guys. Hey, Todd, how you doing? It depends on how they do it. Big key. To me anyway, I think big key. I've seen different rationales for people when they say that they're part of these groups as to why they do it. One is, well, the police won't or can't. Yeah, they may do some things, but there's too many pedophiles out there, not enough police resources. They can't do decoy, situations all day long. So we step in. And some of them say, listen, the taglines that the police will give to the news media of no one should be a vigilante, you can't take the law into your own hands. It's like just the standard statement that gets put out. But yet in private, when they speak to the police are like, hey, you guys are our eyes and ears out here. You're doing this work on a daily type of thing and trying to cultivate these relationships with these people. You do what we can. And so that's, validating for some of them, I suppose. Others, there was a powerful interview, at least to me, with one guy who readily admitted that he did this as, he didn't look at it as revenge for the SA that he had suffered when he was a child, but he certainly recognized later on that it was essentially trauma reenactment, except he was in the power position. And that's what drove him. And it wasn't until he really looked at his past and dealt with his past, not that he had any less of a, I won't say desire to do it, or, the reasoning behind that it's a worthwhile cause. But for him personally, it took too much of a toll mentally, physically, for just in terms of being away from his family. He was never seeing his daughter, that type of thing. And he needed to stop. And so he stopped doing that. And he's since gotten with a guy who's a male survivor, had a male survivor group, and they've kind of combined forces and are doing some really great things in the UK. Sorry, I'm just reading your chats real quick. What is the definition of vigilante? One person, Crystal asks, and Todd said the cops need to be involved. They have to go talk about it in court. I think that that's really where I come down with it. Listen, for those of you who don't know, and I kind of go along this assumption that people do, vigilante, the way I'm using it here, is they are acting outside of law enforcement. So they are not working with law enforcement directly. So even if they do their own thing and then call law enforcement, they're still vigilantes because they are going about everything outside of the legal system. I'm not necessarily talking about meting out justice. So being judge, jury, and executioner. All right, when I use the term vigilante. So that's where I'm framing it. Hey, Crystal, how you doing? I am trying. I'm trying. I'm on 2 screens. What do you mean, Todd? I don't understand. I just have my one playing. If I'm on somebody else's screen, I don't know how. But I'm feeling a little bit better, Crystal. I've been suffering from really bad migraine today, guys. That's part of the reason why my head's a little here and there and everywhere. I should not look at the chat for a little bit because I just got totally sidetracked. Okay, so talking about vigilante and not working with law enforcement. And this is the biggest criticism of these types of groups. So what they will often do, this is pretty rote, there'll be somebody who will enter a chat, will establish a profile of some underage boy or girl, and then they will chat with the person online. And once they have somebody who when they've agreed to meet, the decoys, so the adults, would all drive to wherever the place is, meet them, confront them. And what happens from there does vary by group. So first, I'll just tell you kind of what the differences are. There are groups that do take justice into their own hands, who are shaming these people, humiliating them, making them do degrading things. There's people who are violent towards them, extremely aggressive verbal behavior. There are others, however, who have nice, calm conversations with these people, try to get them to admit what they were going to do or what they've done in the past, and hold them until the police arrive. And then they turn over all of their stuff to the police. There were also some other groups, which was interesting. I saw their videos from it. They just want to talk to the people to try and get them to not do it again. Like, don't agree to meet a 13-year-old online again because you never know who it's going to be. So kind of putting the fear in them of don't do this because you don't know, who's going to be on the other side. The efficacy of that, I am really struggling with. I'm maybe somebody it would affect that way, but for the most part, if you're a true pedophile, which means you have sexual urges, fantasies towards underage children. I don't think that just having a talking to is going to really stop you. You might be more careful. You might try and meet somebody in a different area, who's from a different town or something, but I don't really know how much that's going to stop you. The people that I can get on board with the most, and this is a broad stroke, right? Because individually, I don't know what any of these groups do behind the scenes. I don't know how their chats go. I don't for how long that they talk to these people. But let's just say they do everything right and they calmly speak with the person. They get them to admit to something. It's videotaped. They call the police and everything, all the chat logs, all the video, everything, plus the guy are immediately turned over to the police. For me, in this scenario of having somebody operating outside law enforcement, not working hand in hand with them, to where law enforcement knows that they're doing this, or law enforcement's, part of it with the decoys. That's best case scenario. Where the problems come in legally, one, you've got issues of entrapment. So if you don't know what you're doing in terms of how you're speaking to these people, the potential pedophile, you could open up that door and they've got an automatic entrapment defense. Now, what's entrapment? Entrapment is inducing somebody to do something that they wouldn't have normally done. The best way with decoy situation with this online chat thing is never messaging somebody first, always allowing the pedophile to message you first. Your age is right there up front on your profile. One of the first things you say to that person when they introduce themselves is how old you are, and you let them drive the conversation. Because depending on how that conversation goes, if a defense attorney was able to prove, hey, listen, this girl was saying this, and he wouldn't have normally done that. I'm not saying anything's right. Okay, so don't jump down my throat going, she still doesn't matter if she wanted it. She's 13. That's not consent. I get all of that, guys. I get all of that. Okay. I'm just saying legally, there could be an entrapment defense in some cases. The other problem is depending on how they have stored their information, whether or not they've made sure that every single chat that they've ever had with that person, even if it was innocuous, if all of those aren't saved and then turned over to the police, you can have a huge issue with chain of custody. And, so I don't know what these guys do behind this, most of them that they do behind the scenes. You also run the risk of, I know that there are cases where they have spotted the guy who they thought was the person who they were going to meet, and they've immediately started calling him a pedophile. And I say him, it's because the examples that I all looked at were all men. I did listen to some of the hunters, and they said that, yes, there have been females, there have been couples that they have come in contact with. However, just the incidences that I'm going to be speaking about are all men. So they immediately start calling him a pedophile. They're calling him slurs, things of that nature. Well, it turns out mistaken identity. That wasn't the right person. Or even if it was the right person, depending on what happened, depending on the ages, depending on what was said as the reason for meeting, that guy could have a defamation case against the hunters. So they open themselves up to legal problems in multiple different ways. Not to mention, last but not least, violence, of it escalating for violence. Some of these hunters, it truly seems that like that is their reason. That is their goal, is to humiliate, shame, post it online. And if there's violence and a beating, great, because the audience loves that. Loves seeing a pedophile get his due type of thing. And this I have a problem with. This truly is taking the law into your own hands. You may think this guy is dead to rights. Maybe he is. And yes, I war within myself as a survivor and as an attorney. How do I feel about this situation? But if there is any sort of violence involved, the chance of them being able to get a prosecution out of that case is slim to none. The chances of the hunters actually getting assault charges can be pretty good. I mean, I saw one where they were just verbally aggressive, but they were really verbally aggressive towards this man. I mean, openly hostile. And then they followed him down the street and shot him with colored powder, right? So he had colored powder, different colors all over his back. And he was so scared because there was this whole group following him that he went and hid behind a security guard. And the guys were like, well, the cops are on their way. I don't know if that was true, if they were, if they weren't. But still, from the verbal altercation, as well as actually hitting him with that dye, those guys, that's assault right there, people. That is assault. Those hunters could have been arrested. I have no idea if they were or not, because obviously we don't get that far on the things that I was watching. I didn't see anything to that nature. It was disheartening to me. And there was one guy, he said he was the creator of, after Chris Hansen, of the recent, film it and put it on YouTube type thing, which YouTube, by the way, has restricted most of this sort of content. So they've moved to alternative platforms to post. But when he was doing it, he was doing it because he had trauma in his past. He had somebody who was trying to talk to his daughter, who ended up being a registered sex offender. And so that was initially like why he got into it. But as his videos became more popular, he readily admitted later on, listen, most of the people doing it right now are egotistically driven. And they're driven by money, they're driven by hate, they're driven by clicks and likes. And is that a good enough motivation to be doing what you're doing? I don't think so, no matter what the subject is. Um, the violence that has occurred, the New York Times in their study said that there had been about 170 instances of violent vigilante attacks since 2023. So in the last, let's say, 18 months or so. That's quite a number. I mean, I don't know how many meetings there are between all these groups and pedophiles, so I can't say what the percentage is, comparatively speaking. But to me, that sounds like a lot. And in their analysis, it is only growing. And they said that, there have been violent attacks in the past, but really in the last year or so, it's just ramped up. And you have people killing other people. Whether they initially meant to kill them or not 100% sure. But they've put people in the hospital. The shaming and humiliation have led some people to unalive themselves. And the attorney part of me says, until we find a better system, we have to take the presumption of innocence to heart. Can we read between the lines and say this guy is probably guilty? If that's what, if he offed himself? Possibly. But there could be a variety of other reasons. And until I am seeing that chat or hearing it from law enforcement that they've reviewed that chat and everything is the way the presenters, the hunters, are saying it is, I'm not going to project anything onto that person. And here's a story as to why. I should say a story that illustrates this. So last year at a university, a group decided that they were going to lure somebody to campus. And they did. It was a 22-year-old service guy who happened to be in town for his grandmother's funeral, looking to have a better time than a funeral. And he arrives on campus. He's immediately surrounded by, I think it was like 12 people or something like that. This is a large group. And they beat him up. I mean, he escaped, thankfully. But had he not been in such good shape, I don't know if he would have or what kind of injuries he would have sustained. The sad thing about that is I wasn't able to get specifics as to like exactly what names they called him. So the only thing that was reported is they called him a predator. I don't know if they used that P word or if they used the other P word. This guy was 22. He thought he was meeting an 18-year-old college student on campus because that's what her Tinder profile said. Now, she was actually 17. And so that's what the hunter group told the police. Oh, he was here to meet an underage person. She was only she's only 17. Well, it's true. She's only 17. However, her dating profile said 18. And she never said any different. So this guy thought he was meeting an 18-year-old woman, young lady, and he's 22. Guys, that's not pedophilia. Diagnostically speaking, there needs to be a greater age difference than 5 years. So right off the bat, he can't be considered. And at 18, should have been over the age of consent then anyway. If you have some moral issues with a 22-year-old and an 18-year-old, I suggest you deal with that yourself. I cannot. This was one of the more egregious ones in terms of, to me, just kind of cut and dry that this never should have happened. And they never should have been going after somebody who's 22 trying to pose somebody as 17, which they didn't even do. There are organized groups that do this, or just last fall, there were a group of fraternity brothers and pledges who decided to get on Grindr and try and lure somebody out saying they were going to meet a 15-year-old, which they did. The guy got away after, I think he broke his rib and something else, but he went home and immediately unalived himself. I know some people out there say, well, they're better off dead. That's what should happen with all of them. Until they go through the process, I just can't make any judgment on that. And I guess that's the lawyer part of me, that I have to hold true to those standards. And that's why the hunters that calmly speak to the people, not getting in their face, not yelling at them, not throwing accusations, just calmly asking them questions, trying to get them to open up. And as soon as they get any sort of confession, immediately call police. And the ones who don't post anything online, any video, they're the ones that I can have a little bit of respect for. I've seen ones where, say there's a gentleman and he goes after people who are trading in child pornography. And so that's his tact that he takes as an in for as a decoy. So he doesn't have to pretend to be somebody else. He is calm. He has conversations with them. He calls the police right away, but he does post his video of his interaction with these men online. I'm just not for it. However, there's a piece of me that says the one thing about in that situation that I can kind of see the value in posting this is showing a broad audience how ordinary these people are. You know, it's one thing to stand up here as an educator, as a trauma survivor, and say, listen, predators, abusers, they look like everybody else. They can be anybody from any walk of life, any age, any gender, any sex, you know, let's go on. It's another for people to see like picture after picture after picture of these are all people who are admitting to this, and they come from all different walks of life, right? I have conflicting feelings, though, even about that. Because I know name and shame, that was kind of a big thing for a while, and some places still do it. Some localities will, put the person's picture in the paper, everyone who's arrested on Friday, or things like that, or for certain crimes. Yes, are you shaming and humiliating the predator? Yes, but you're also exposing their families to potential violence because it's been seen before where people's houses have been set on fire, people have been run out of neighborhoods because somebody in their family was arrested for something like this. And I think that we as human beings really need to be careful with this because this is guilt by association. Are there times where there are people in the family who know what the predilections of this person are, what they've been doing? Certainly. Are there times where there have been people who outside of the victim, they don't know? Absolutely. And so to vilify somebody simply because they are related or associated to somebody who has been caught in one of these situations, to me, that's just aberrant. And I absolutely can't abide by it. The violence is only on the rise if studies are to be believed. And I think it is like anything else. Let's go back to the porn industry. 70s porn was nothing like it is nowadays. That was vanilla compared to what you can get nowadays. And why is that? Because people take in X content for so long, they need something new and exciting. It's just like a drug. You're on a drug for a long time and you need something, you need to up the dose. So they need something a little more extreme. The same thing, that's the same type of thing that I see with this violence. If these studies are to be believed, and the lynch mob mentality of some of the people who are watching this content, and they're out there just, yeah, hang on, beat the crap out of them, and the more they are on that, then the more that's going to push the content creator, the one who's not doing it for, all the right reasons and in the right way, to put out more of that kind of content, because that's what's going to get them the views. That's what's going to get them the subscribers. That's what's going to get them the likes. That's what's going to get the money. And that type of work, regardless of whether you're having to view anything, just that sort of interaction with people you despise, takes its toll mentally. And I can see why somebody who went into this with good intentions, meaning not revenge, right? But I want to do this because not enough of them are exposed. So we're dealing with that day after day after day, that could just turn to complete and utter hate. Mike says, arrest doesn't mean guilty. What if charges are dropped because they had the wrong person, or is it determined nothing was done wrong and a bad officer didn't care? That's where being the judge, jury, and executioner has it's definite problems. And not only that, the public shaming aspect. I mean, some people just can't even take that. There is something called shame trauma. And it's for those people who were just, shamed and neglected and told they weren't good enough their entire lives. And to have something like that, that could be the last straw for them because you have no idea what else is going on in their lives. There was a case in Australia, and I know there's more. I couldn't spend too long in the rabbit hole tracking down, every violent instance. But there was an incident in Australia. When was it? Hang on, guys. About a year ago. And how the wife met these people, I don't know. It didn't come out in my readings. But essentially, the wife falsely accused her husband of essaying their girls. Again, they didn't detail how they figured out it was a false allegation. So you're just going to have to take my word on it in regards to the situation. But she found some people, told them what the situation was. Hey, my husband's molesting my girls. The cops won't do anything, whatever line she fed them. And they were like, well, yeah, we'll get them. We'll get them. We'll come after them or whatever. So she lets them in the house. I think there were 4 or 5 of them. And they beat the crap out of him. They tortured him for hours to try to get him to confess, and they ultimately put him in his grave. A guy who ended up not being guilty of the charges he was accused. So now, obviously, that's a little bit different of a situation because you don't have these people who came after him hadn't been decoys. They hadn't been talking to him online, weren't convinced of their guilt because of some external evidence. They were just believing this woman for whatever reason. But I just think we can't risk that. You can't risk the ones who don't do it right and don't immediately involve law enforcement. The prosecutions are next to none. So I listened to this guy who said he was like the creator of the online content of, pedophile hunters or whatever. And I don't know how many years after he started it was, but in 2019, he came out and said, it's all wrong. It's all wrong. The people who are out there now, a lot of them I trained, and he said they're doing it for the wrong reasons. We're not involving law enforcement. He said that he was high on drugs most of the time, that he was doing this sort of thing, and it wasn't the right way to go. And I thought, here's a guy who did a 180. Well, fast forward, he ends up back in the game, except this time he says he's working with law enforcement. The podcast I listened to with him also says that he is speaking at schools and doing all sorts of things. So, I mean, I have no reason to doubt him. I didn't do a deep dive in on his biography to prove everything that he was saying. So take that with a grain of salt. But there are just too many pitfalls I think that can happen. And I'm really nervous about this trend. Because if the past tells us anything, when things get more extreme, people tune in. I was listening to one guy. I don't know. In my opinion, it was just apparent he was just doing it for the money. He said he was doing it because of, the police couldn't do enough, and you have to get pedos off the street and da 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 da. But this guy has like this whole team who's with him. He's got like a pretty good production budget that he does with this. He um, supports himself with the money that he makes from this. And the snippet that I watched from a documentary, they were trying to get this one guy to come over. He was supposed to come over that night. So they were filming, right? And so all this is live on their live stream or whatever as they're filming. And then it turns out that the guy doesn't end up showing. But as they're discussing him being there, the girl who's been the decoy says, "Oh, by the way, he's in a wheelchair." And this guy is like, "Oh, even better. We can just, if he shows, we can just pick him up and bring him in here. And then we've got him as a captive audience, basically." And he goes, "And we can just cut that part out of the video." What else are you willing to do? It really, really gives me pause and makes me wonder. Because if you're going to work with law enforcement, if you're actually serious about getting these people off the streets and trying to get convictions, you can't give the police spliced video or audio or text chats. It has to be everything, raw footage, all of the texts, even hi, good night, all of it. Kamal says you don't play with lives for clicks and views. Yeah, it's Mike says, "I'm pro police, but there are some out there that will arrest people for this just so the picture will be published and the person will be shamed." And that's bad policing, right? There's bad ones in every profession. There's bad policemen, there's bad firefighters, there's bad lawyers, there's, right? Just like take a cross section of society, and there's going to be bad people in every sect, race, age group, sexual orientation, right? I mean, we're human. We're absolutely human. But for something to be going on this sort of trend has me deeply worried. One guy beat with a hammer, and he suffered a very serious traumatic brain injury. You've had them where they've, shown license plate numbers, they've given home addresses out, they've given phone numbers out. And then one guy said at the end of his thing, "We'll see ya." Oh, well, probably not, because most likely you're going to die tonight. Insinuating that somebody who was watching, since they have all this information, that somebody would probably come for him. I can't. I just can't agree with that. Hi, Body. I'm not sure if I said hello to you. So what about these people's families, their children who may not be victims, who witness what happens to their parent or family member? It's those innocents, as I spoke with about with the shaming, you know, putting everything on YouTube or whatever social media platform there is, and about the other people who are affected. Now, I kinda go back and forth on that because if you're charged, you show up in court, it's public knowledge, it's public record. So if the police are there and arrest him right then, is it any different? What's different is the exposure amount, right? So many more people, because of the internet and social media, can be informed of something. So as to where things were before, well, yeah, it's public record, but who in town is really going to know? Who in town's going to find out? I suppose it depends on how small your town is, whether your paper reports on these sorts of things. But now it's very easy to see the wives, the husbands, if that's the case, kids, parents getting harassed, getting vilified, getting shunned because of who they know or who they're related to. And that definitely speaks to us as human beings, right? We need to be aware of that kind of thing and that we treat everybody fairly and with kindness. Who deserves it? So I don't have a great answer in regards to any of this. I have a lot of conflicting feelings for certain. This isn't one of those things where I come down on one side cut and dry. I can tell you the violence, absolutely unnecessary. Um, Personally, and this is me, my moral compass, where it goes with me, I can't condone the humiliation that some of them have done to some of these people. You know, get on your knees, bark like a dog. You get the idea, right? I'm not talking about the humiliation of just putting the videotape, on online. I think if your goal is to get these people off the streets, you have to do it right. You have to know what your local law enforcement is going to accept and make sure that you're following all of it. Like I said, I'm still conflicted on the posting, like even their picture or whatever online. I just feel like when things get online, even if you have the best intentions, like there's this group, Dads for Something or Other, and they started out and for 3 years they were nonviolent. There was nothing. But then things started to ramp up and more of their members started meting out their own justice. And again, I think that goes back to you could have the best of intentions when you start with something, but when you're dealing with something that dark every day and you don't have the kind of training and the knowledge for self-care, that can lead you down a really dark path. And so whether it's because of that or whether it was because of becoming more popular on whatever platform that they were on, and then seeing dollar signs or getting giddy on the fame, or whatever the situation, whatever the reasoning was, that kind of perpetuated their violent trend. So I just see a danger with it. Even if you're that well-meaning person who's just speaking to them very calmly and turning everything immediately over to the police, the moment you start posting that, you're just inviting trouble. So I I just have some issues with it, you know, before they're convicted. Like says, for it to go to court, the evidence has been checked over by several attorneys who decided something wrong was done, and now it's time to prove it. At this point, I'm okay with public knowledge. So, okay. So after their arrest and after they've been indicted, basically, is what you're saying. Yeah. Oh, Crystal, I'm sorry. Said when things went down with her family because of her brother's charges, the church tried to throw the family out. Yeah, I mean, it's guilt by association, and that really bothers me. That really, really bothers me. I know some other people wanted to talk about this subject with me, but it looks like they're probably not going to join us this evening. So this might be something that we revisit. I might revisit with a slightly different twist. I've got some other things in the back of my head that I want to talk about that are tangentially related to this. So I might bring it up again. One thing I found was interesting, and it was a stat I'd seen before, but because I was never able to really find it again, I haven't really talked too much about the stat. You guys understand that pretty much my answer to everything is education. Because I do feel in the world of trauma that education relies at the heart of it all. Now, there were some there were some publications, some analyses that I was reading. These were more clinical journals and things of that nature. And they were talking about, in order to stop this, you have to get at the root cause. And the root cause is within that person, within that perpetrator, within that pedophile. So you need to address them, and you need to address their issues early. And we need treatment and medication and all these things, for them. My internal jury is still kind of out on the treatment side of things when it comes to pedophiles. What I do know, and I had seen 90% before, and now an organization called Child Molestation Research and Prevention Institute, their stat says that 95% of sex abuse is preventable through education. And like I said, I'd seen 90% before, that you could see that big of a reduction when the kids know what to do, the kids know what to look for, the parents know what to look for, when you have neighbors who are looking out for each other, when you have people's eyes and ears open and willing to listen to one another, to the kids. That's powerful. So yeah, treating the perpetrator, but you're also talking about somebody who may or may not ever offend. You take away that victim pool, watch the essay just skyrocket down. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. And when I first came across the statistic, I actually saw a study that they had done in a particular town. Don't ask me where it was because this is probably at least 8 months ago now, where they had this big community push. It was a small community, so it was easier to track this sort of thing. But they had this big, huge push on education and getting everybody to talk to everybody. And I'm not sure how the study went, but eventually they said that their essays went down by like 70% or something like that. Because if something creepy was happening, the kids were telling. If there was somebody who was kind of suspicious, people were on guard and they were asking the right sorts of questions. And they were involved. Not everybody gets to have two great parents. Not everybody even gets to have one good parent. So I think it's not a matter of taking the raising of other people's children in your hands, but definitely, it takes a village mindset in terms of let's look out for each other. You don't have to talk to your neighbor over the fence line. You don't have to bake cookies for the new person who moves into the neighborhood. But let's be kind. Let's be aware of who's around us. Let's be aware of who's around our neighbors' kids. Hey, Dana, how's it going? Glad you're here. No worries, no worries. Hey, Chris, what is up? How are you doing tonight? Cotrain, first off, welcome. Thank you for joining me this evening. Your uncle said that when he was a teenager, that people prey on women and children are broken and can't be fixed. I don't want to get too deep into this, but I think that the issue on whether there's treatment for these people from what I understand currently, there is no magic bullet. There is no one treatment that is going to fix somebody and make them not attracted to children anymore. They've had greater success with rehabilitation, true rehabilitation for people who were sexually abused themselves or had some sort of odd situation occur during their early sexual development. And we're talking, I think they label that as like 6 to 8, something like that, where things get warped in their minds. And I suppose, could be even later ages. I'm not 100% sure. That those are more when it's a learned behavior. So we're talking about the nurture versus nature issue. When it's a learned behavior, there's much more of a success at being able to redefine sexuality with those people. Not to say that it's easy or that it's going to happen even 50% of the time, but it's supposedly been possible. And you can argue all day long as to whether or not you think those people are really rehabilitated or whether they're just lying to get out of whatever. I don't know. Who knows? I do feel pretty confident, at least on what I have read thus far. And I do have a couple of articles, a couple of clinical journals that I have set aside because this is an issue that I want to look at. For the people who say that they were born that way, they were, ever since they can remember, they were attracted to children. It's just never been any different. There really are no treatment options. in terms of quote unquote fixing the issue, in terms of getting them to be not attracted to children. What they can do is teach them coping skills, positive coping skills, so that they can be non-offending. But those thoughts, those fantasies, that's still going to continue in terms inside their mind. Crystal says some people can and some people can't. Davey says they can learn how to sympathize. Yeah, and I think that that's part of being able to learn coping skills. And obviously that's only going to work for the ones who actually have the ability. If you're a psychopath or a sociopath, studies show that you just can't teach empathy. I mean, they can mirror it, they can mimic it, right? But to truly feel it is a different story. And, that's another reason that people can abuse children, is because they fall into this category of what they just term an opportunist without feelings. And basically, we're talking, there's nothing in particular about a child that sexually excites them. More than likely, it's a power situation, and they're a sociopath, or, oh God, I have a bug in my room. Sorry, guys. So it definitely is person dependent, but I think there's a big thing about nature versus nurture on in terms of true rehabilitation. David says, I would hope there are some who can be rehabilitated, but never allowed around kids. I've listened to some stories by some people who were offenders, and they admit they're offenders, and they were pretty bad offenders, meaning their offending days, were years, right? Decades even. But through treatment, they were able to, and this is what they're saying on camera, right? So again, you have to take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, that I'm just reporting what they say. So if we are to believe them, if they don't learn empathy for the victims, they do at least gain it for the families, that it's easier for some reason to gain an ability to empathize with the pain that you cause those around the victim. They don't want to offend again. Now, whether this is because they've come to a personal epiphany that this is bad and I shouldn't be doing this, or whether it is, I just don't ever want to go back to prison again. I don't know. I don't know which one it is, but they realize that they cannot be around children. So they do not, they have no contact with their grandchildren. They don't go to schools. They don't go to, places where there's going to be kids. And unfortunately, the several that I watched, and these people were basically hermits, because where can you go where there aren't any kids ever, right? I mean, even just taking your car out to the grocery store, there's a potential where you're going to see children. And some people were at that level where they were like, I can't. Others were like, I just can never be alone with them, right? Or in a social situation with somebody, but just going to the grocery store didn't bother them. again, I think that you're teaching them coping skills. That's not rehabilitation in my mind. So, hi, Mandy. How are you doing? Thanks for dropping in tonight. Yeah, I don't know what to think about some people who don't offend again. It's easier for me to think about it in terms of your brother, Crystal, because so much of what he was doing and the reasons for doing it were because of interfamily stuff, right? Stuff just because of stuff that was going on within your family and your mom and the whole atmosphere and everything else. So to me, it's that learned behavior, and the chances of those people being rehabilitated um, are great. But also, and I'd have to ask you, more questions in depth, which I don't want to do here. Um, but we have to keep in mind that true pedophiles, their sexual urges, they're only turned on by kids. There are other people who abuse children who are not pedophiles. So pedophiles only would abuse children if they did abuse. There are some who say they're non-offending, but they admit that this is how they feel, right? So the target audience for pedophiles is always children, but not all children who are abused by pedophiles. You can call them child abusers, child molesters. There's a bunch of different names that you can term the people who fall into the other categories of offenders. People who kids and teens who are experimenting socially, or curious, or for whatever other reason, they throw those into one category. The opportunists, and people with either mental or physical is the wrong word, mental or medical issues, and usually it's a medical issue to dealing with the brain, which skewed things for them. But it's not their natural state. Like if you were to dig down into this person's sexuality, who are you attracted to? Kids would not be their group. So I just want to point that out because I think it's important for us to keep in mind. I'm just going by down in the chat. Hang on, guys. Okay. Yeah, I think I got most of them. I'm just looking over my notes real quick, guys. Give me 2 seconds because, like I said, I have things written everywhere. Yeah, I have a video that I was going to show you guys, but then even looking at that, I realized these aren't groups that I want to push. I don't really want to give them airtime. That's why I haven't named the names of these vigilante groups. They're out there for you to find. But I don't want to give them airtime. I don't want to perpetuate their agendas. That's not what my channel is about. So if you want to find them, I'm sure you will. So I decided not to go with any of the visuals that I had in regards to that. But I have a question for you guys. And this may be where I leave it for the day. Truly, again, for me, I have to wonder with when people put it on social media, the chance for even good intentioned people to turn bad is just heightened. And I just don't think that we should be taking that risk. Not only from a legality standpoint, but also for what it can do to the hunters themselves, because they're getting something out of that reaction from people. And the potential for that to go down a dark, dangerous road and people get sucked into that. Again, whether it's for money, fame, doing it for just entertainment, doing it for likes, for the accolades, whatever just the chance of that happening is just, I think, so much more exponential than if you did this job or did this task, you videotaped it, and then you turned everything over to the police. As you call them, I'm at the meeting. Yep, the guy's right here. Please come arrest him. I got the video. I got everything. Here's everything, and just do that. And if they want to follow up after the guy's been indicted, it is public record. I couldn't say anything one way or the other in regards to that. They have every legal right to do that. I think unless you to me at least, taking that tact really shows that you are in it to try and get these guys off the streets. You are in it to save another child victim. You are in it to ensure that this person receives their justice, which means they get due process. They're innocent until proven guilty. I just have an easier time believing in someone who wasn't posting it online, that was their intentions behind it. What do you guys think? And I ask you, if you're on replay, drop a comment after the stream is over, if you could. Do you think people doing this sort of work help? Are we getting people off the streets? Or is it a hindrance? Is it not helping? And specifically, I'm speaking of when it's being posted to social media. Maybe I just have it be that question. Do you think that their meetings, because it doesn't have to be a confrontation per se, that their meetings with the person that they have been chatting with should be posted online. If the guy's arrested, if he's not arrested, do you have a caveat to that? Yes, but, or except for. So let me know in the comments. I'm really interested to see where this community falls on this question. It's nothing new. People have been doing this for quite a while. But if the studies are right, and our trend because of social media means that things are getting more and more violent, I'm concerned. I'm very concerned. Hi, Kim. How are things going? Hello, hello, hello to you. Just checking, just checking. Yep. You're right, Mandy. Yeah, I said this earlier that police don't like the hunters because it can mess up an investigation, and that's why if they are going to do it, they have to be extremely careful. And the best thing is to try and work with your local police agencies. Let them know that this is something that you would be interested in calling them about, and see what they have to say behind the scenes. Publicly, they're going to say no vigilantism. Don't attempt this at home. You're not a law enforcement agency. Behind the scenes, it seems that there at least is a certain segment of the law enforcement community that is like, just do it right, keep us posted, get us involved as soon as possible, and you'll be good to go. So, all right. Well, on that note, I think we're going to end here today. Like I said, we might yes, Chris, the Alaskan Avenger. I did read up on him, and he was definitely a person who was in it for the wrong reasons. Well, he wasn't even a pedo hunter. He just looked up people's names on the sex offenders registry and went after them. So I can't even call him a pedophile hunter. But just like pedophile hunters, he was doing it for the wrong reasons. He was doing it for revenge. He was mad about the abuse that he suffered himself, and he was lashing out, pure and simple. And he's admitted that. And at least, whether you believe that he believes that he was wrong and that he understands why now, or he's just saying that because he hopes to get parole one day, I don't know. That's, you guys can watch his interview and decide for yourself in regards to that. Hey, Rick, how's it going? Thanks for being here. Yeah, and it's that. Oh, he has a YouTube channel. Well, I hope he's using it for good then. Rick, I'm not even sure if this is your comment was directed at this, but you said, but the online haters really go. I take that to mean that they really go to town, and they do, because just look at the amount of trolls that certain people have, or the animosity and vitriol that people will spew because they get to be anonymous on the internet. And that can fuel people. in all the wrong ways, obviously. And I'd be interested to revisit the subject a year from now and see if there's been any new studies, see if there are any new stats. How many incidences have there been, have they logged? I'd be curious to see. We'll see. We will see. Who is Alex Rosen? Alex Rosen is he calls himself a predator poacher, I think. He is solely focused on people who are peddling child pornography, or whether they're trading it or whether they're just looking to buy it, to have it. I have seen a number of his videos. He does post them, not on YouTube anymore, but he does post them. I will say, from what I'm at least able to learn of him, he does seem to, let's say, his approach is the right one. He's very calm. He basically lets them talk and, ask pointed questions here and there. It's not a forensic interview. It's not as good as a policeman would do in terms of the interview. But at least of the ones that I've heard, by my opinion, I think that the confessions would stand up in court. And oftentimes he gets them to admit to more than just the child pornography, which, then it's up to the police to investigate and, be able to support any additional, any of the allegations. But at least of the ones that I've seen for him where they've been arrested, they've had the pictures like on their phone or their laptop, and were able to give that to the police right then. Not the hunters, the perpetrators, right? The people they were meeting, and they admit that, yes, I've got it on my phone, or yes, I've got it on my laptop. And so yeah, that's the other thing is pay to see my content in regards to this. That just I just wonder if that brings the wrong element. I don't know. I know that there were some people who were interviewed who say, no, I love this particular hunter because I'm a survivor and I never got justice, and he's doing, what I could never do, and he's taking down these people, and each and every one of them deserves it. And of course that they would pay for merch, and they pay for a subscription, and they have dedicated followers, no doubt. And people who are there for various reasons. I guess it's, I don't know. Like I say, I have a war inside me going on with some of the aspects of this. But Alex Rosen is never violent. Is never violent, and he does seem to take the money he does, basically just be able to support himself for doing this full time and traveling wherever the wind takes him in order to go confront somebody. He doesn't limit there's some groups that limit themselves just to the state or to, a city that they're in or whatever. I haven't found anything. I know he recently got arrested for obstruction, I think, but I don't know the circumstances around that. So I think it was in regards to a sting operation he was doing, but do not quote me. If anybody knows more on that, I do not. Okay. All right. Well, with that, I think we are going to end. And I did not queue up my other banner. So you guys get to listen to, I did put out as a video today. You guys will get to listen as the outro, the wonderful song that one of our subscribers, B, put together for me. And it was very touched about that. So she kind of takes you down memory lane for where the channel's been, and did it in honor of the award that I won. Sorry, guys, the mute button doesn't work. So I will see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. for the Clothesline Project debut. I'm really, really excited about it. I hope you guys will all be there for it. It should be really, really interesting to see all the different t-shirts that people made in person, actual t-shirts, and also virtually online. So we had a good mix of both. Remember, you are worthy. You are valuable. And you are loved just the way you are for who you are. Hugs and love for me. Enjoy the outro. Surviving together. Never alone.
She stands in shadows, yet shines like the sun. A quiet hero who makes the world run. Her ears open wide while her heart holds the skies. She dives into your chaos and helps you rise. She stitches the wounds in your shattered soul, turns broken pieces into something whole. With words like lifelines, she pulls you through fire. The weight of the world can't dull her desire. She's a world-changing woman, heart of gold, carries your burdens but never folds, gives you wisdom that cuts like a knife, changes your story, brings you to life. Her strength's in giving, not in taking fame. She never seeks glory or the brightest flame. A mirror to truth, she helps you see the version of yourself you long to be. Her selflessness is a gift and a curse, feeding the world while she quells her thirst. But her light's too fierce to ever be dimmed. In her presence, hope's always brimming. She's a world-changing woman, heart of gold, carries your burdens but never folds, gives you wisdom that cuts like a knife, changes your story, brings you to life. She's a world-changing woman, heart of gold, carries your burdens but never folds, gives you wisdom that cuts like a knife, changes